So what's the headquarters of the Legion of the United States, Major General Anthony Wayne, Commander-in-Chief?
Very good question. The Legion is the Army of the United States of America. It was called the Legion at the time, partly because I liked studying the Legion armies of Rome.
Now you're Anthony Wayne, I presume?
I am Anthony Wayne, Major General Anthony Wayne. Sometimes people call me Mad Anthony Wayne, which originally it seemed insulting, but I think it's complimentary now that I understand the complexity of what they were trying to say. So this is the Legion Army at the Battle of Fallen Timbers, and there are 4 sub-legions. And you'll see them here as 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, and 4. And some of the other elements are cavalry and rifles and artillery, and they were all really subdivided amongst the 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So I was commander in the middle, and this was down near the present town of Maumee, Ohio, against a variety of Indian tribes, mostly under the leadership, earlier anyway, of Chief. Got some noise going on here.
I am amazed at how easily they move those cannon.
Yeah. So under the leadership of Chief Little Turtle of the Miami, but since at the time of the battle, Chief Little Turtle thought that it was not a good idea to have battle with Anthony Wayne and the Legion, because he thought that the Legion was too powerful for what they were doing. But others, like Chief Blue Jacket, said, let's do it. And they took a big vote at the council meeting of the chiefs, and those that wanted to still have the battle had the majority. So they had the battle. So Little Turtle might have been there, but he wasn't really heart into it. So this is what happened. It lasted about an hour. Some say 45 minutes. But it was a hot, sweaty day, August the 20th of 1794. And when the lead elements of the army, which was moving east, hit the line of the Indians, they all had their guns pointed on the lead elements, and when they got close enough, they just shot them.
They call that a forlorn hope sometimes, don't they? Or...
Depending on, yeah, it could be. So they were initially successful, and they started falling back, but then the army formed up into their battle arrangement, and then they kept moving forward, and they kind of kept coming in, and they had a hand-to-hand combat for at least 45 minutes, which probably seemed like about 4 hours. So eventually it was so overwhelming to the Indians of the massive, well-trained army of Anthony Wayne that they just started dispersing back.
Okay, now these numbers, are those troop sizes?
Those are troop sizes.
So you've got 7 groups of 20 in the front row, then 2 groups of 37, then another group of 20, and then 70 riflemen, 50 light infantry in the center, then
yes,
3 groups of 10 horse, and then his main.
Some people might even think it was overly engineered. But
it certainly looks very complicated.
As Anthony Wayne, I was trained early on in my teens. After I got out of high school, I went to the academy in Philadelphia, and I studied with Benjamin Franklin, who was a man of science and math and surveys. And so maybe I kind of got that extra statistic.
That does look like something a Roman general would come up with.
Yes.
Versus a skirmish line.
Yes, exactly.
You've got defense in depth, you've got great complexity.
Yes, exactly. And of course, then during the Revolutionary War, I was under the command a lot of General Washington. And then at Valley Forge, which I was there with him, with General von Steuben, who was regimenting us a little bit more. So, if you wanted to do this, you have to do it right, or give it up. You have to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, kind of. So, I guess I was kind of like that, a little bit more so than than any of the other generals of the time, and because of that, a little bit extra. What's the word? Extra, not extra. A little bit eccentric, I suppose, in a way, or going a little bit beyond, going that extra mile. A lot of people thought that was mad, and plus some of the other things that I did.
As
So
opposed to, there's the bad guy, you shoot him, if that doesn't work, you tomahawk him.
So, you know, when you're a little bit above the rest, and everybody else is mediocre, they're thinking you're mad.
Okay, so what's Bar B back here with his 800?
Bar B, they have the 800. Now, some of these were actually coming up in the front. It's the cavalry.
So is he the reserve then?
Militia.
Or?
These are militia.
Okay.
Not well-trained, part of the normal Legion. Not really a part of the Legion exactly. They were actually from Kentucky that came in. I really didn't want them in the beginning because they weren't trained. So, but I did concede, and I thought, well, let's have them. We could at least have them in the back. They can come out onto our left flank in this particular battle, and if the Indians start coming around on our left flank, then we can stop them with them, and we can put them out in front as our pickets. So if something really happens to them, you know, they will warn us of where they're at, and then our main force of my trained men will come into them. So it worked out well. But they had, Barbie was a commander of this group. And we pushed them off, and we advanced another, I'd say about 3 miles, set up camp, which was kind of in the center of the current Maumee, Ohio area, and went up to where the British Fort Miamis is at. And I advanced to the fort myself and went up and talked to the commanding officer there of the British, and they only had a couple hundred, and I had about 3,000. They had some cannons there, of course. They were right on the Maumee River. We had them surrounded, and the Indians had gone beyond a few miles, several miles beyond downstream, and set up their encampment there. And we had some parleys with the British, and we didn't want to fire at them, and they didn't want to fire at us. That would have caused a war between the two nations. They weren't supposed to be on our property in the first place. That was in violation of the treaty we had from the Revolutionary War. So, but we just left them alone, burned the Indian villages, burned all their supplies, their crops, and all the way back we did the same thing, all the way back to Kikionga, to force them to come to the battle. To force them to come to the peace treaty the next summer. Now, let me show you this. This is a kind of interesting. This battle was a historic moment. There was a painting done of the peace treaty. The peace treaty was a historic peace treaty, very significant, brought peace to this area. And then a person about 150 years later made a painting of this and put it all in one day with a lot of the important people. And then last year we had a photograph of the peace treaty, the way the painting looked, and a lot of reenactors were in the photo. And here's Anthony Wayne. William Henry Harrison is in here. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark are in here. Zebulon Pike is in here. On the Indian side, we have a lot of the Indian chiefs: Little Turtle, Tarhee the Crane, Bakongahelas. A lot of them are there. They weren't necessarily really all there in one day in actuality, but doing this was a historic moment in itself, I think. And this is kind of a close-up of that.
Okay. Yeah, that is impressive.
So then after the peace treaty, we had peace for about 15 years, which is somewhat of an unheard of thing to have peace, and we were able to start having settlers come up to the treaty line at least. The next year after the treaty, people came from Connecticut and started to the Cuyahoga River, which was the treaty line, and stayed on the east side of the treaty line and platted out a town which was going to be called Cleveland. and that was as a result of the treaty. So the treaty lasted for a long time until about almost 20 years later, one of the lads, one of the braves, a teenager with the Shawnee named Tecumseh, who was in the battle, moved in, and he was with his brother. He was just a brave, and moved in and had hand-to-hand combat with, and one of his brothers actually died there. And some people believe that hardened Tecumseh's heart, and he would always fight the whites or the settlers from then on. So he formed his own confederacy of pretty much the same tribes, and not all of the tribes went in with Tecumseh, but some stayed peaceful, but some of the segments went with him, and they had a lot of other battles. And one of the big battles that they had was against a gentleman that was with me as Anthony Wayne. His name was William Henry Harrison, and he was only about 21 years old here, but he later on became a general himself and built Fort Meigs, which was across the river and downstream about 3 miles. So many of the same Indians, younger, 20 years younger, now were maybe chiefs like Tecumseh was, and helped to fight the Americans there with the aid of the British at that time. And some of the Americans, the younger ones that were in this battle, some of them were there at Fort Meigs as well. So it was a continuing saga. But that did, even after that battle at Fort Meigs and the Battle of Lake Erie and the Battle of the Thames, where Tecumseh was killed, again brought peace to the area.
Yeah. I know one thing about, Ohio history is they solved this so long ago. Most of the history we care about is just fighting the swamp.
It's fighting what?
The swamp.
Well, in some areas south of the river, in this area, it was all swamp for I'm going to say maybe 100 miles possibly. In 100 this way, 100 this way. So it was it took a while.
This is the Great Black Swamp in northwestern Ohio.
Even in this area, so big ditches were put in, and the canals were put in, and that helped to drain the swamp, because then the water could go into the swamp, into the canals, and kind of feed the canals a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think I'd heard that part.
Well, it had to go all the water had to go someplace.
Yeah, but I never thought about the canals as swamp drainage.
Well,
Okay.
But it would, I don't know, because they were put in
the early 19th century.
Yeah, but it was like 1840s, maybe, and that was about the same time when the swamps were being drained. Had made progress before that, but the water had to go either into the streams, the natural streams, or maybe into a canal, possibly. I mean, it wouldn't be.
I don't think the canals generally took water from the surrounding area.
Not in general, no, they wouldn't. And I don't know that they really ever did. But when I think about it, if you have a big ditch.
Yeah, but they were generally a little bit higher than the.
They were, and they're usually by the big river too. So there might have been they might have had an aqueduct or something, or like a.
Generally, they all got their water from the headwaters, and then they just kept it as much as they could.
Yeah, they probably, unless they were going overland, like in this area when they went cut down to Junction. You know what Junction is?
Yeah, I think we drove through it on the way here.
So that's kind of going not by a major river. So I don't know how the swamp. That's right.
I think they were just a convenient way to get through it, mostly.
Yeah. That'd be a question to I don't know. I'm not sure about it.
We studied the canals somewhat. The Indiana Canal would make a hilarious comedy movie.
The what?
Yeah, basically picture Jethro Bodine tries to finance a canal so he can build New York. Then you have the history of the Indiana Canal. and it works about as well as you would think it is. Yeah, it's these people did not know what they were doing.
Really, they tried it. They were kind of successful in some areas for a while.
Basically, the Ohio canals moved 250,000 people in who probably couldn't have been brought in at that time any other way.
Now there's the Eastern Ohio Canal, which was about 20 years earlier.
Yeah.
So it had a little more success.
Well, you know, the thing is, everybody looked at the Erie Canal in New York, and they don't realize there are 20 canals in New York, and one of them's making money. Between New York and Albany, and if you don't have a New York and an Albany, putting a canal in will not be a license to print money.
Yeah.
This battle formation you have here is quite an impressive thing.
Now one of the aspects, I don't know if you can pick this up, but this is a floodplain, but there was like a ravine that came, which was low ground.
Oh, beautiful.
Ravine. And this was a little bit of a hindrance of the army coming in, especially of the cavalry that would come in with their horses.
It would also be a natural defensive item, wouldn't it?
It could be, but they tried to actually get over it because that's the battle line was up farther. Early on, some of the Indians on the Indians' left flank actually went down into the floodplain, and some of the first sublegion went down and pushed them back out.
So how much lower is this floodplain?
I'm going to say about 30 feet.
Well, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, it was quite a drop off. So, if you've been to the area before,
I don't believe so, no.
so there's a monument that's right there.
So this is Fallen Timbers?
This is Fallen Timbers. I might have a picture of it.
I know it's a very famous battle.
We go over there, are you from this area?
I'm from 30 miles south of here.
Okay, so here's the monument. And this monument was put there in 1929. I believe there was a woman that had some money that
You've been
they
busy
put it.
talking all day, Frank. I haven't had a chance to stop by, but I gotta get going.
Oh, okay.
I'll catch you next time.
All right, John. Thank you. Talk to you. Have a good day.
You too. Probably see you next week sometime.
So every year, the Fallen Timbers Battlefield Preservation Commission will have a memorial service, not on Memorial Day, but usually on the Sunday, because Memorial Day is usually busy with other things like that.
Yeah.
So we will have dignitaries and people there dressed up as Indians, and Anthony Wayne's there, and other people, and people representing Canada who were at the battlefield. And they feel that the Canadian Army today traces their roots to the Canadians being here, dressed as Indians. Not really in support of any British, but as friends of the Indians, because they were more French, and French were more amiable with the Indians. But
Yeah,
this,
I'm told they would live with them, take wives with them.
Yes.
Didn't stay aloof, went native, basically.
yeah, okay, so the British were not really like that. But the British were really more like military, and the French were more like traders and trappers and things like that. They're more individualistic. Also there's a Turkey Foot Rock that's there,
Okay, but
and there's a legend that there was a Chief Turkey Foot, which we don't think there really was, who got on the rock and rallied his troops. Well, there was an original rock. We think maybe it might have been that same one at this point, where that little dot is. And this is where the floodplain actually stops, and it's really against the river. It's like a cliff, so it's just like a hill. And they actually call that Presque Isle. During flood season, this hill would be kind of surrounded by water, and it would be like an island. So that's why they call it Presque Isle, or almost island. And now the monument is over at this dot, with the perspective of where my troops are at. And that's where the monument is at, which is kind of on the battlefield. And it's right at the edge of the high ground.
So how big an area did you put your army over, deployed, I mean?
Well, maybe 1 square by 1 square mile
Okay.
for the heavy, but maybe you could expand that out to 2 by 2 miles from the river going north, and then from one side marching into it, and then pushing the Indians out, maybe 2 miles, which is really quite a
That's a
large
pretty
area.
good area. I mean, 2 miles square.
Because they're almost 2 miles north of the river, there have been some artifacts discovered. Right now there's a big mall, an outside mall that's about right in here. There's a visitor center that's kind of like right in this area someplace. There's a trail with the Toledo Metro Parks, and it's also a National Park affiliate that goes around this way, goes over this ravine and out into this area and comes back. And then over in this area, there's a hospital. I-475 comes probably right in this through here. And US 24 goes right in through about here. And that's the same area where the canal was at. And there used to also be, during World War II, a German prisoner of war camp right in this area.
So that's a lot of history they've built on top of that.
Yeah, and there was farming, of course, and agriculture, and
I vaguely remember the big to-do when they wanted to build that mall. Fallen timbers, and a lot of people were very unhappy about that.
Unfortunately, there's been a lot of land recently for sale, and it would have been nice if the Metro Parks would have had the forethought to just go ahead and buy that up and add on. But they weren't. It's a Metro Parks. It's not really a Metro military history.
Yeah,
group.
it's,
So
there's
they're
a
more
lot of
interested-
stuff in the Toledo Metro Parks.
They're more interested. In fact, they did have history in the mission, in their mission statement for the Toledo Metro Parks. They took that out, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And there was fear that some of the other historic activities of the Toledo Metro Parks was going to be closed down. And not, or at
Yeah,
least not
the
expanded.
cities tend to do that.
They don't see history as being important.
I know there was kind of a fight the other year. They almost, Defiance kind of wanted to get rid of this place.
It happens all over. So I don't think the people that run governments understand the importance of what they're governing.
They're looking out for number one.
Yeah.
You know, like
They
Lima, they tore down their locomotive works and put in nothing. That huge piece of history.
Tiffin took down its courthouse,
Yeah, I remember
Seneca
that.
County. Well, it's not maintainable. Well, because you didn't maintain it over the years. Whose fault is that? That's their fault. So it's kind of.
Yeah. So I see you have your campaign flag, your flag here.
Yeah, that's a replica of a flag that several were made, we believe, by the Miami Indian women, and probably they were paid to do this, and used at the Greenville Treaty as a token gift for the treaty. Of course, we had the wampum belt, we had a peace pipe, we had the document itself, which is, I think, about 16 pages of describing where the treaty line would be, and then a few pages where everybody was signing, and a lot of the Indian chiefs, they would sign with what looks to be kind of a similar symbol, kind of like a cross or an X. Some are a little bit different, and they have their Indian name listed, printed in, and William Henry Harrison's name is on there too. So it was quite a document. And I don't know where this document is, the original.
Okay.
I mean, at National Archives maybe. But a lot of people have taken photos of it. It's online, and you can see some of it. I have some of it. I give a presentation on this, like a PowerPoint. So a lot of my things are on my slides. In fact, there was the one last original. We think it's unless somebody's got it in the private collection, another one. But there's an original one that was given, I think, to the Miamis, and it's in the Idle Jordan Museum in Indianapolis.
Okay.
and it's got a little hole in it at a certain place, and so there was kind of a big treaty.
That's great. Well, thanks for talking to me.
Well, thanks for coming
I
by.
mean, so what all do you have here? You have a whiskey decanter, is that?
Well, especially in my later years, you know, I had gout really bad. Before I got to Defiance, to start Fort Defiance, a tree fell on me in my tent. Some of us think maybe somebody
Cut
in
it.
my unit was out to get me and wanted to because they knew that person was named Wilkinson, and he commanded one of the sub-legions and was really officially number 2 in command. If something happened to me, he would become in charge. Well, I had worked with William Henry Harrison and some of the others to say that Scott was going to be in command if something happened to me. Scott was number 3 in command, but he was going to be the one that would take over if something happened to me, because I kind of thought Wilkinson was a traitor, and maybe he was behind pushing this tree over on me. Plus all of our supplies coming in. When we were supposed to get a barrel of this or a barrel of that, it was half full, or maybe they didn't come in at all. I believe he was probably responsible. He and his cronies in our nation's capital. Not my friends, not Washington's friends. Not the United States of America's friends. They're
Nobody's friends.
They're
just
all,
their
they're
own
all
friends.
for themselves.
Yeah.
We always have that in our governments,
Yeah.
and probably always will. And I always talk about the flags. A lot of times they're red, white, and blue. Whether it's this one or the flag that we had at the treaty, which was a 15 star and 15 stripe. The blue are the real patriots, the real people that are really interested in the country. The red are those that are maybe looking out for themselves, looking out, they want to be back with the British again, the red coats. And then the white are the fence sitters. They're kind of, they really don't know much about what's going on anyway, so to make a decision, but they'll go whichever way suits them best, whoever's winning. So that's just, I think it's been that way ever since mankind's been around, and probably always will be.
Okay, so what are these boxes you have here?
Well, this is just a little box. I've got my personal items in here with my business cards, so I give presentations.
Oh, okay.
And I also do William Henry Harrison.
Oh, okay.
And I do him as his whole life, so I do it when he was running for president, U.S. president, in 1840. And I do Francis Scott Key. So I just, you know, I give cards out to people. If they're head of an organization, they might need a
I was
speaker.
just wondering if they had a historical precedent.
No, not really. And then this is just a box I picked up from a vendor that's here. And this is an event that I put on last year. I'm sorry, last weekend in Bowling Green. It's called Early Ohio and the Portage. It was similar to this. We were talking about Early Ohio and the Portage. The Portage River is the little river here that comes across. It's south of the Maumee River, and it goes for about 2 or 3 counties down into the northwest Ohio area. And it drains a lot of the water in that area.
Well, thanks for talking to me, and